अमरीकी नुमाइंदा खुसूसी ज़ल्मय खलीलज़ाद इंटरैक्टिव सेशन से इजहार ख्याल कर रहे हैं।
But to problem solve and to do what we can, because outsiders do have a role in Afghanistan. We are there, we have a role, neighbors have a role, they can play a role as a constructive partner, or they can be as spoilers, both, as the Secretary General says, inside and out. And I have to say that that while the challenges are there, the opportunity is also now there. And I hope that Afghans and the neighbor will rise to the occasion. And we have to cooperate between now and when we get to an agreement among Afghans. But at the same time, I believe, since war is the cause for the refugees, war is the cause for some of the economic problems that Afghanistan has, the suffering of the people, we need to also update our plans for the refugee returns, given the possibilities that are there. We need to also get more engagement between Pakistan and Afghanistan, for not only for peace, so that each territory is not used against the other. After peace, that there are assurances, confidence that each other's territory will not be used against each other, but that as the American agreement with the Taliban can open the doors of inter-Afghan negotiations, that the peace agreement will open the door for much greater Pakistan-Afghanistan cooperation on economic issues, for example, not only on consolidating the peace, but also on economic cooperation. And I also think, over the longer term, the Afghan economic cooperation is less urgent than the peace. The peace is the most urgent. The benefit of peace for the two countries needs to be planned for. And also, the Prime Minister says it, the President of Afghanistan says it, that the ultimate economic solution is regional cooperation on economic issues, on trade, on integration, on development. I think this Afghan-Pakistan cooperation opens the door for that. It can't happen without that. So we need to have a more longer-term cooperation or discussion started now as to how does Pakistan want to relate to Central Asia. Yes, economic cooperation is good, but how? What sort of relations does Pakistan want with the C5, the Central Asian countries? What Afghanistan's relations will be with the Central Asian countries? What the two together will do vis-a-vis the Central Asian countries? It's time for some intellectual thinking of how to operationalize, assuming peace, the potential on the economic front and the potential on the bilateral and on the regional basis. So yes, I am cautiously optimistic, but I'm realistic enough to know that there are lots of challenges ahead, but I believe that maybe better than any time in the last couple of decades, there is an opportunity.
And I wonder, Filippo Grandi, the man who has the job that the Secretary General previously had, as he mentioned, in the absence of peace, Ambassador Khalilzad had mentioned also that war is raging and people maybe don't realize just how bad the situation is. Maybe it's not in the media as often as it should be, and that's a fair point. Is the refugee crisis underestimated as well, and the scale of it when it comes to Afghan refugees?
Well, I don't know if it is underestimated. Certainly, it is not underestimated here, where Pakistan is now observing the 40th anniversary of a very heavy-duty hospitality. But I wanted to make a comment from another angle. I was listening to the various speakers before me. You know, UNHCR, as the Secretary General knows very well, as everybody knows very well, has really been with the Afghan refugees throughout these 40 years. There's very few other populations with whom we have been so closely associated as an institution. And therefore, I think we know this population well. And if you go back to the history of this long exile, you have two significant moments. One is 1992, after the withdrawal of the Soviet troops from Afghanistan, massive, relatively large return of refugees to Afghanistan was not sustained. Country went into civil war. In fact, I remember as a very young field officer serving in Jalalabad, people were coming in this direction. We had to assist them on the way. That was the early 90s. Then there was the early part of the next decade, 2002, after the Taliban war. I was actually the head of UNHCR in Kabul, and Ambassador Khalilzad was actually the US ambassador then, back then, and we witnessed an amazing return. 3 million people. I remember in Torkham, trucks lining up with people wanting to return to a relatively fragile situation, but in a way voting for their feet in the hope that the country would remain peaceful and they could contribute. After so many years, they had already been 20, 25 years in exile, they could contribute to the rebuilding of their country. Now, I hope that the patient will live, and that with the support of everybody, but especially with the engagement of the Afghans, because this is their process in the end, this process will be successful. The peace patients will live. And then this may, once again, trigger a movement of people going back. I do believe that, 2 times, 3 times, people become more cautious, more time goes by, it's more difficult, but I do believe that we may be surprised by, again, another drive to repatriation. But we can't disappoint the Afghans once again. I can't think of any other refugee population in the world, other than perhaps the Palestinians, that have been more betrayed by history than the Afghans. And I think we cannot betray them once again. If the peace movement progresses, then as all the speakers have said, we need to build on the heels of it a real peace and not let go, because otherwise it will not be sustainable, and then, frankly, it will be too late to try it once again. So we have a chance here that I think is important, and I hope that everybody, in particular, if I may say, the Afghan parties, are the ones to live up to this responsibility to their own people. We cannot disappoint them. I want to make just a final comment, and I did mention this briefly in my opening remarks. Meanwhile, of course, because this won't be fast, this will take time, and yesterday I was very happy to hear the foreign minister speak about graduality, because this will have to be a gradual process. Meanwhile, hospitality will continue beyond these 40 years. And there, as I go back and finally answer your question, I think it is fair to say that yes, it has become very difficult to mobilize resources to help Pakistan, but also Iran, the other big host country, to shoulder this responsibility. Most of what is done now for the refugees in these 2 countries, in health, in education, in giving them access to livelihoods, is done by the host countries. Right. The international community, we speak a lot about burden sharing. That burden sharing has become minimal. So, we've been working with both countries on new ways to address these challenges involving development actors. It's very, very complicated, but we have an important discussion with the World Bank here in Pakistan. This needs to continue as we prepare for the most important solution, which is return. So we need to play on both tables at the same time, and we need the support of everybody.
Well, thank you, Filippo Grandi. And I wonder, Dr. Sania Nishtar, to your right,
UN हाई कमिश्नर इजहार-ए-ख्याल कर रहे थे। उन्होंने कहा कि सोवियत यूनियन के इनखला के बाद 1992 में अफगान मुहाजिरीन अपने मुल्क वापस गए।